Gene, I'm wondering, to start off, could you just provide us with an update on the latest developments when it comes to the post-2026 Basin States discussions?
I can tell you that the discussions are going well. They're positive, they're constructive. We have meetings scheduled again for the next couple of months. The discussions are very frank, continue to be very frank. And one of the things that I would just share with you, as we are wrestling with multiple things, but one of which is the term of a potential new guideline. And that varies from anywhere from as short as 5 years to upwards of 20 years. And that's something that we continue to wrestle with. One of the things that is significant, as we have shared before, is the commitment of the lower division states to reduce their use by 1.5 million acre feet. That's absolutely huge. And as we talk about that, we want to make sure that that's a long-term commitment, not just a commitment for the next period of time that we go through the guidelines. That use needs to be reduced in order to help balance the system. And we think that's absolutely critical. And that's one of the discussions we're having. We want to make sure that if we do have a shorter period, that 1.5 continues beyond that short period. And so those are some of the detail that we're discussing at this moment. Progress is slow, not as fast as anyone would like to have it happen, but due to the complexity of the issues, I think baby steps are appropriate and baby steps are in order. And as we've talked about in the past, some of the concepts that we will discuss and are discussing, frankly, will never see the light of day because we can't agree to them. And so it would be premature to share a lot of detail simply because those details have to be ironed out and worked out in that small group before we're ready for prime time to share those with a much broader group.
We understand that coming out of the last Upper Colorado River Commission meeting, the commission made a motion to direct staff to look into getting credit for conservation projects. I wonder for our group here if you could explain what's going on there.
Over the last two or so years, there's been an upper basin-wide conservation program that basically pays water users, in particular farmers, to voluntarily forego irrigation for a season in an effort to conserve water. And this really started in response to some of the, emergency low lake levels that we saw at Lake Powell and Lake Mead in 2022. However, there's no mechanism currently to make sure that this conserved water makes it down to Lake Powell and stays there. And we really need it. We need to retain this water at Powell so that we can shore up reservoir elevations, protect critical infrastructure, and also to continue to satisfy our obligations to the downstream states, the lower basin states. So the 4 states through the Upper Colorado River Commission at the last meeting took action to explore opportunities to obtain credit, how we might obtain credit for some of this conservation, some of these activities that would generate water that's reasonably certain to make it to Lake Powell. I'd like to underscore the fact that this doesn't necessarily mean that existing programs will go away. I mentioned this conservation program that we've had that's been active over the last couple of years, but this will provide another tool, as it were, in kind of the conservation toolbox. And the bottom line is we're pursuing the opportunity to get credit where credit is due for this conserved water.
Before we turn over to the media, can you tell us what sort of engagement you've had with the Native American tribes recently?
I believe we talked with you about an MOU that was executed in April among the 6 upper division tribal leadership, along with the UCRC. So that's the 4 upper division states. That MOU was signed, and we continue to progress on that. The memorandum of understanding suggests that we meet periodically, about every other month anyway. We did have a meeting in June with our tribal leaders. We continue to find common ground. There are concerns, of course, that not all of the water that is allocated to the tribes have been put to use. And of course, if there are uses by the tribal or additional uses by the tribal folks in the upper division states. That puts additional stress on the river. Yet at the same time, they're entitled to that and should be able to use that. We're looking at ways that we can work with them to use that water. In some cases, it's infrastructure. In some cases, it has more to do with finances. And so those are things that we believe as states, we can help the tribes acquire financing and other arrangements that will allow them to use some of that water. In the event that they choose not to use that for a short period of time, there are discussions about potential forbearance agreements that would allow that water to continue in the system for a period of time that could be agreed to in the future.
I wonder if you could weigh in on how the state is partnering with the federal government and making progress when it comes to the Colorado River Basin.
I think the other area that we're really working very closely with the federal government on, to Utah's benefit, I might underscore, is with respect to this once in a generation funding that we're seeing, right? Two big buckets of funds. One is the Inflation Reduction Act money, and the other is the bipartisan infrastructure law money. And Utah is working through the Upper Colorado River Commission to take full advantage of federal funds for some of our initiatives that we've made a priority in the state of Utah. For instance, around measurement, obtaining additional measurement devices so that we can better get our arms around our water use and water availability in the state of Utah. And then, with respect to some other funds and priorities, any sort of drought mitigation, conservation activities. I mentioned this credit investigation that is underway currently at the direction of the UCRC. We're also able to take advantage potentially of some of this funding for conservation activities, more durable conservation activities, and potentially some ecosystem and restoration projects. So we've got, again, two big buckets of money. I think Utah could certainly benefit from some of these funds, as can our sister states in the Upper Basin.